Rian said hoarsely, blood seeping from his wounds, panting, then let's end it here. Rian looked up at the sky, blood streaming down his temples, and gritted his teeth, trying to suppress the pain. If you want to be proud, someday. Rian yelled, his throat burning, then fight, you idiots. In the darkness, countless eyes followed, no matter who they were. They all shared one desire. Someday, they all hoped to have their names spread far and wide. Like a phantom on the battlefield, like the greatest swordsman, like an ironclad knight. They crave it. Figer laughed loudly, a savage laugh. Figer growled, his eyes flashing with red. What the hell are you looking at? He growled threateningly. Want to get hit? Figer challenged, eyes full of ferocity. Just try it if you want to share the same fate as that guy. Figure was bewildered, not understanding what was happening. A figure suddenly flew upwards. The sharp knife sliced through the hanging rope. Rian fell face first into the ground and cried out in shock. The person who rushed forward to cut the rope was Elzine. Elzine deliberately didn't help Rian and, lowering her voice, stated firmly, I've made up my mind. Your name is Ryan, right? Elzine asked decisively. Elzine appeared before Rian, her robust figure clad in rugged clothing. She held out her hand, beaming, I'm Elzine Tes. Ryan looked up, his eyes full of suspicion. His hands were still tied. Let's fight together, Elzine said, her voice full of determination. In the crowd, a man exclaimed in astonishment, Elzine Tes, isn't she supposed to be really strong? Another person growled, she said it now. A student stood in the crowd and angrily shouted, if you still consider yourselves men, don't just sit there. I won't run away anymore, another person roared, determination clear on their face. Figer raised his hands, trying to reassure the crowd. Hey, everyone, calm down. Figer muttered, a cunning glint in his eyes. I understand. If you've decided to go this far, Figer's eyes blazed with fire as he roared. Then, Figer clenched his fist, veins popping. You think I'm going to back down, you fools? Figer roared furiously, his voice full of hatred. You bastards, come and get me. He bellowed into the crowd, raising both hands to the sky. This is war. Another voice echoed, full of bitterness. You think knowing how to use a map is everything? Some blonde boys staggered away, coughing and gasping. Cough, huff, somebody, help, teacher. Rian remained tightly bound, Elzine standing beside him with an awkward expression. She mumbled, I'm sorry, then continued, her voice full of regret. I stabbed the table you chose. Rian looked at her, his eyes momentarily sad. He said, his voice calm, it's okay, I never wanted to be a hero anyway. He looked up and continued, that's why I brought you to a place with no teachers. Elzine was surprised and exclaimed softly, huh? Then she asked, her voice suspicious, wait, you really don't understand? Rian frowned and asked, understand what? Elzine looked him straight in the eye and said, her voice serious, there's no way the teachers would let us leave so easily. She emphasized, even now, everything is being graded. Elsewhere, Figer was taken down by the crowd, lying flat on the ground, tears streaming down his face. Then came the penalty. Figer and the others, despite their high scores, were expelled. Ogent Rian was the top student out of the 300 admitted, which is why he became the valedictorian of the Kaizen Swordsman Academy. Back to the present, in the Academy's auditorium. Elzine said, pointing towards Rian, her voice full of excitement, and that's Rian, currently in last place. Hearing that, Ryan quickly retorted, his voice a bit surprised. Hey, I didn't ask to be at the top. Elzine chuckled, patting Rian's shoulder and saying, but you're amazing. Elzine looked at Rian with admiration. How can you practice every day without resting? I would definitely be exhausted. Ryan didn't seem to care much about Elzine's words, replying indifferently, I forgot about that a long time ago. Elzine anxiously asked Rian, aren't you worried? You have to graduate, and you also have to build your reputation as a swordsman. Elzine continued, you'll be held back if you're last on this test again. Ryan didn't react at all, so Elzine shook Ryan's hand and said loudly, hey, answer me. Elzine watched Ryan walk away, worried. I'm really worried. Ryan paused thoughtfully, his voice low. What drives me? Ryan looked into the distance, replying to Elzine, there are things more important than graduating or reputation. Ryan stated, with a determined look, my goal is to become stronger. Ryan continued slowly, his voice solemn, for my master. Hearing this, Elzine was astonished. Master? Don't tell me you've sworn fealty to someone? Elzine, unable to hide her curiosity, walked up to Ryan and asked, that can only be done once in a lifetime, and you've already done it. They must be incredibly famous, right? Rian, his expression unwavering, replied, What are you so curious about that you're asking all this? Elzine immediately retorted, her tone slightly sulky. Of course I'm curious. You're going back to school after already having a job. Elzine continued to press her tone more serious. So who is it then? The one you entrusted your whole life to? Rian replied casually. Shirone? Elzine seemed not to believe her ears, stammering, Shirone. Then she muttered to herself, wondering, what is this person doing? Rian stated firmly, that's my friend. Rian elaborated, Shirone is attending a magic academy in our hometown. Elzine paused, exclaiming in surprise, huh? Lightning seemed to flash in Elzine's mind. She wondered, did I hear wrong? She continued to ponder, not a mage, but a student. Elzine's face showed utter bewilderment, and sweat poured out. No, there's someone. Elzine was stunned to realize, a vow given to someone with no reputation or future. In Elzine's vivid imagination, Rian and the girl stood before a majestic scene. Elzine exclaimed in astonishment, a girl. Elzine's face clearly showed shock, her eyes wide, her mouth agape, as if she couldn't believe what she had just witnessed. The test has started. Hurry up and get over here now, Rian roared, his tone completely impatient. Or do all you idiots want to fail? Elzine followed closely behind Rian, unable to hide her worry. Wait, your friend Shirone, it could be. She didn't finish her sentence, thinking to herself, damn it, I definitely have to ask him later. They are in the CQB training hall, a vast space designed like a small neighborhood. Parka, the strict coach, stood before the trainees. Today's exercise is about movement. He emphasized, specifically, we will score how you shift focus. Parka Cuan, a 6th level swordsman, boomed, you there. Parka pointed at a student. Tell me, where does the heart of a swordsman lie? He yelled, his face flushed, dripping with sweat. It's the navel. Parka smirked, his eyes scornful. So stupid. Wrong. Parka growled, his sharp eyes sweeping over the group of students. You, speak quickly. A trembling trainee stammered. It's the sole of the foot, Parka roared. Completely wrong, you idiots. Parka pointed to another student who tried to explain, his voice cracking. It's the stomach. Parka angrily yelled, we already learned this. Give me 200 push-ups. A trainee, panting and doing push-ups, muttered under his breath, damn it. Parka crossed his arms, watched the struggling students, and said calmly, the answer lies outside your bodies. Parka continued, his voice steely. In technical terms, we call it peripheral gravity. Parka said in a resounding voice, repeat after me. Gravity, periphery. A resounding shout echoed, shattering the silence. Gravity periphery. One student blankly wondered, what is that? Another student exclaimed in surprise in their thoughts, that's the first time I've heard that. Parka scoffed, it's no surprise you don't know, Parka explained, because I was too lazy to explain before. Parka continued, his voice serious. I will demonstrate once, so watch carefully. You will be tested immediately. A worried student muttered, wait, he's going to test us on this without teaching it to us first? Another student gritted their teeth. We're in the exam and he's just teaching now. A voice full of resentment echoed in his head. I'll kill you. Teacher! Parka stood before everyone, sword in hand, a determined look in his eyes facing forward. When you step up, instantly, the sword slashed down. Chop, Parka commanded decisively. Step back and strike. The blade flashed, creating a powerful gust of wind. Ah! The students cried out in alarm, retreating backward. A trainee whispered, a look of astonishment on their face. He just swung his sword, but what is this energy? The Parka maintained its pose, sternly saying, these are the basic movements of swordsmanship, the movement of the body and the sword. You shift your weight by tilting your body. And using that momentum, you will increase the destructive power of the sword, Parka explained meticulously. Parka continued, his tone forceful. If you apply the schema, the destructive power will increase exponentially. The expressions on your faces tell me you think it's obvious, Parka said, his eyes sweeping over each of them. That's why you'll all die in 3 seconds in a real fight. It was just luck, a student mumbled, looking unwilling to accept it. Parka looked each person in the eye, emphasizing, remember this, in a real battle, movement is more important than strength. Parka stood firm, his cold eyes fixed forward, explaining clearly, depending on the situation, a swordsman will shift their center of gravity outside their body. Immediately after, Parka continued, his voice full of confidence. For example, without delay, Parka moved quickly, planting one foot firmly and creating a loud thud that echoed. Parka put power into his legs, spun in the air, his eyes resolute. He said, his voice deep and firm, "Right now, my focus." As Parka hung in the air, he completed the rotation. Parka growled, "Behind you." Parka plunged down with terrifying speed, the powerful impact creating a large cloud of dust. Parka landed with unparalleled power. He declared, his voice echoing, "This is what's known as external gravity." Parka stood up straight, the dust gradually settled, and he continued, his eyes shining, "Use this." Parka suddenly shot up from the ground. The crowd, horrified, exclaimed in unison, "Whoa." One of them stammered, "What? What is that?" Another added in a panic, "Did he just emerge from nothingness?" Parka continued walking. Each footstep echoed, "Tuk tuk." A horrified person cried out, "He's walking on the ceiling?" Parka, from above, coldly looked down and said, "Yo." Parka plummeted with terrifying speed. Screams echoed as a ferocious, crimson tornado swept through, swallowing everything. Parka surged forward, unleashing a continuous whirlwind of death. The crowd was in utter panic. "Ah!" A heart-wrenching cry rang out in the air. "No way." A horrified man exclaimed, "What is this? Is someone really able to spin that fast?" Parka continued, the fiery red vortexes seeming to crush everything. "Ah!" A scream rang out. Rian stood frozen, his eyes fixed on the deadly vortexes. Elzine stood beside her, a serious expression on her face, and said, "This is insane." "There's no way to withstand an attack like that," Elzine whispered, her eyes revealing obvious worry. Elzine continued her analysis. "That attack wasn't based on strength, but on momentum." Rian listened in silence. Elzine gritted her teeth, her eyes hardening. "This is the swordsmanship of the one once known as the image of death." Parka held the sword in his hand, looked directly at the blade, and said in a deep voice, "This is the application of external gravity." Parka continued walking, his powerful footsteps echoing in the space. He explained, "Of course, I'm not actually manipulating gravity. I'm simply augmenting my strength with a schema to recognize extreme inertia." Parka walked through the crowd, exuding an overwhelming presence, and emphasized, "I'm simply exaggerating it to demonstrate in a way that you can all understand. This is what you will be tested on today. Understand?" The trainees standing before Parka replied in unison with resolute voices, "Yes, sir." Parka ordered, his voice unwavering, "Now then." The three students standing next to each other swallowed hard, cold sweat breaking out on their foreheads. Parka raised his hand, pointing straight ahead, and said in a stern voice, "Anyone who just wooed during the performance, drop and give me 200 push-ups." Parka shouted, "Begin." The students immediately dropped to the ground, trying to do push-ups as quickly as possible. Panting echoed in the air. "Yes, sir," they replied in unison, their voices full of determination.